Boys and girls, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think Arcane is absolutely insane. I also think she's the most universally broken character in Arknights Endfield on her release. She's somebody who can not only fully pilot a main DPS role on a team and nuke for up to 1,000,000 damage at P0, she can also fully support all teams in the game with the exception of physical teams. Now, I will say her tribe, her home, is going to be nature and cryo teams. That is where she will excel the most, but she can even perform in both electro and fire teams as well, since in her supportive role, when you put the support build on her, she can apply arts infliction stacks effortlessly while also crowd controlling, whether she pulls enemies together for AoE situations or slows them down entirely. This woman can do a number of things, and then she can apply corrosion, which reduces all elements resistances, increasing even more damage to the team. So there's a lot to talk about with her from both DPS and supportive roles. So let's cut the yap to the minimum and let's go ahead and get into it. As a quick heads up, this woman can be played in 2 entirely different ways, and it entirely depends on if intelligence is higher than will or will is higher than the intelligence stat. Now, typically I don't start off with how to build these characters, but given this detail, we need to start off with how to build her. So if you're going to use the hot work set, which is her DPS set, it will ensure that intelligence is going to be the main stat, which means it'll always be higher than will. This is the set you're going to use in tandem for her DPS mode. Bad news is there are 2 pieces you will have to craft alongside of the new update, which means you'll have to do a little bit of factory grind to build up these 2 pieces. But once you build them up, it's all the exact same set and she'll be good to go. Now, the alternative set for the supportive role is going to be the Eternal Zyronite set. Same concept applies. Look for all the pieces with will on top and intellect on bottom. Will would be the main stat on these pieces, and you'll go for ultimate gain efficiency, which will ensure that will is higher than intelligence, transitioning her entire kit over to the supportive role, which functions entirely different. That out of the way, let's start off with her basic attack sequence. The only thing you really need to worry about with basic attack sequences is 1, do they do anything unique? And 2, how fast are they? With Arcane, it does nothing unique. The only good thing about it is that she's ranged, and so you don't have to be in harm's way as much as a melee character. But the other thing is it's not really that fast. It's like a moderate pace. And so you don't have to pilot her if you're looking for the maximum efficiency of getting basic attack sequences off. I will say though, when she pops her ultimate, you do have to do a final strike 2 times in a row with her ultimate stance. And so that does impact maybe a sweaty player if they want to use somebody else to get through those final attack sequences a bit quicker. She also has a nice little fancy double dash when you use her double dash. I always appreciate the little details in these regards, but let's go ahead and get into the battle skill for the DPS mode. For the DPS mode, the battle skill does nothing fancy, except it just deals more damage than if you were in the supportive role. It also applies 1 nature infliction stack. Now, I do want to warn you guys, it's not really worth using inside of the DPS mode, the battle skill, unless you're trying to create corrosive stacks from consuming non-nature inflicted stacks. So if you have somebody like Tong Tong on your team and she's putting a lot of cryo infliction stacks on the enemy's head, you're going to consume those cryo infliction stacks with Arcane's battle skill to create 2 to 3 to 4 stacks of corrosion, which is going to reduce the resistance of all elements on those enemies' heads down and allow your team to deal more damage to them. That is the benefit of corrosive infliction. And there is a particular point where you want to cast her battle skill in tandem with her combo skill, because in the DPS mode, you can get even more vulnerability and susceptibility uptime when you cast it while they're slowed. Now, when you switch over to the supportive role and you use Arcana Will, it functions just a tad bit differently. This will be good for AoE situations when there's a lot of mobs. She can actually have a pull-in effect upon casting her battle skill, which will bring the mobs close together, similar to Gilberta's skill. This is very valuable, of course, for crowd control when you're dealing with pesky mobs all over the place. Next up is the combo skill, which is actually very important for her kit, so we're gonna have to lock in on this one. First, the condition to trigger it. Either applying 1 nature infliction stack can actually trigger a combo skill. So somebody like Gilberta pops her ult, which she applies a nature infliction on her ult, can trigger the combo skill. But if you don't do nature infliction and you do a non-nature infliction stack, you have to have 2 of these to activate her combo skill. Now, in her DPS form, you're either going to be using Tong Tong as her partner or Perlica as her partner, which means you'll have to apply 2 different cryo infliction or electric infliction stacks before you can get that combo skill to proc. But once it's triggered and you activate it, this is where things get interesting. In DPS mode, you'll apply imprisonment to the enemy along with nature and cryo susceptibility. This is why she's excelling in nature and cryo teams, because they get the susceptibility debuff. But in addition to this, the enemy also drastically gets slowed by the imprisonment. However, it only lasts for 4 seconds. But in her DPS mode, when you cast the battle skill onto a already imprisoned enemy, it will return SP back to her and extend the nature and cryo susceptibility uptime 2 more seconds, bringing it to a total of a 6-second duration. This is very important because she's a nuker and you want to cast her ultimate a second time after all debuffs have been put onto the enemy as well as buffs have been put on your team. And so the window is not too long to pop that second ultimate and get things going. And so it's very important that you do not cast her battle skill until the enemy is imprisoned, but you also have to make sure all the buffs from your team are activated in this window as well, as it only is a 6-second window. But when we go over to the supportive role where will is higher than intelligent, things change up quite drastically. Now, when you do her combo skill, any arts infliction that's applied to the enemy will immediately trigger it. So it doesn't even have to be nature. It can be any arts infliction, and just one time and her combo immediately procs. And it will apply an additional arts infliction of that same element, making her very supportive friendly with various different team comps, once again, outside of physical elements. And it actually gets better. This can spread to other enemies, making it very AoE friendly. And on top of that, it can apply imprisonment and another pulling effect like Gilberta's, bringing the enemies in together. So now her support role can pull in with 2 different abilities, the combo skill and the battle skill, while also applying arts infliction. And the last thing worth mentioning is that when you have the will supportive role, it'll increase the efficacy of nature and cryo susceptibility. Finally, we're inside of her ultimate. Let's start off with the DPS form. All you need to know about the ultimate is that it gives her these missiles on the sides of her, and when you do a final strike inside of her ultimate, missiles will hone in on the target, dealing solid damage. You got 2 stacks of this, which means you have to do 2 final strikes, and then you run out of those and it transforms your ultimate into a second casting. Now, this is where things get very important, because this second casting of the ultimate is the highest multiplier in her kit by far, hitting for a massive 1440% multiplier. So you do want to make sure that when you're doing DPS Arcane, all of your buffs and debuffs are applied before you cast this ultimate a second time. That's where you're going to be able to do that massive amount of nuke damage to the enemy. There's one final detail inside of her DPS form as well, and that is you'll apply a free corrosion stack onto the enemy's head when you pop her ult. So even if there's no corrosion on their head, you pop ult, it gets a free corrosion stack. Now, the support role ultimate is actually very easy to understand. All you need to know is that when you pop her ultimate inside of her support role, it inflicts another arts infliction stack of the same element. So now her combo skill inside of her support role and her ultimate can inflict a combined total of 2 stacks of the same exact element, making her insane for stacking up arts infliction on any of your elemental teams, once again, outside of the physical element. We're almost done with this section. We now got to talk about, of course, the 2 passive abilities. Tactical planning is actually very important to take note of, because in her DPS form, when you pop her ultimate, she gets a free 24% arts amplification buff just for popping ultimate. So while you're inside of the ult, free 24% arts amplification. You do not want to butcher that buff when you're using it, obviously, to nuke with the second form ult. In addition to this, it even amplifies the nature and cryo susceptibility for your ultimate moves as well. So that's very strong. And then we have weapon honing, which makes your corrosion last 10 seconds longer and amplifies the max resistance reduction to all elements by 10%, 1.1 times the original. In regards to Arcane's weapon performance, her signature weapon is definitely going to be very strong. It's not only amplifying her performance as a DPS, it even amplifies the team's performance as a whole collectively, because it increases arts damage taken by 9.6%, arts susceptibility as well for another 9.6%. That's a lot of damage given to the team. But the Battle Pass weapon is also pretty decent as well. It does give a attack percent damage bonus to the team, but it is significantly weaker than the signature weapon. In fact, on paper, at R1, no refinements, it's doing 80% of the signature weapon's performance at the same R1. And then at R5, refinement 5, it's doing 90% of the signature weapons performance at R1. So the signature weapon is going to be a strong option for Arcane. But of course, as usual, if you're not taking things that serious, the Battle Pass weapon will function just fine, and it's free to play as well. Now, in terms of team recommendations for DPS Arcane, this team here is going to be the best team that I've had results with. Shout out to my boy I Win to Lose. And I found that you can either use Akakuri in that 4th slot or Gilberta in that 4th slot, but I like Akakuri more, surprisingly. I know, the 4-star character versus the 6-star character, because she gives SP back to the team, and you want to get a bunch of stacks on the enemy's head with Tong Tong, so you're going to be using up a lot of battle skills. So you're going to need somebody to give some SP funneling back into the team, which makes her a very solid 4th option. Plus, she gives the link buff. She can also rock the Frontier set for that damage bonus to the whole team. She's just a fantastic 4th slot option. I imagine the idol character is probably going to be a banger right there too, the character coming after. But if you don't have Tong Tong, this team kind of falls apart a bit. And so that would be the alternative option, which is going to be a lot more free to play friendly. It's going to be Perlica, and it's going to be Akakuri. And then in this is a flex slot. You can do Gilberta, the idol character. You can also do the Ardelia as well in this slot. But this is going to be the more free to play friendly team. I'm thinking this team is not going to feel as good without that idol character in this 2nd slot. You can do the team I'm showing you, but you really got to be on top of your stuff because her ultimate doesn't last long. The massive buff she gives to the team lasts for like 4 seconds, I think. Then you want to make sure the link buff is being casted upon her 2nd ult. It's a lot of like you got to know what you're doing with this team. I will say it will perform, but you definitely need to know what you're doing with this team. But that said, if you're going DPS, oh man, this team is amazing. Now, in regards to her supportive teams, as I said, guys, you can run her with any of the elemental teams. She's going to be there to apply more arts infliction stacks with her combo skill and her ultimate, while also slowing down, pulling enemies in, even applying corrosion so that they can deal more damage. There's a lot of things that you can do with her in terms of these, like the flexibility inside of these elemental teams. I just don't recommend putting her inside of a physical team because, well, kind of rough. But the best value is obviously going to go inside of nature and cryo teams because her art susceptibility is only going to be applied to those 2 elements. But outside of that, you can use her in this team here as well, Feng Yi's team. You can also use her inside of the Feng Yi team, and you can use her inside of the Levitain team as well. This team's going to be quite expensive. Of course, you can swap him out for like a Akakuri if you want to. Now it's time to walk you guys through the rotations and how it all comes together. Of course, we have our favorite guinea pig, this dude always getting wrecked by me. What we do in the very beginning is we start off popping both Jahi's battle skill and then Tong Tong's battle skill, because the name of the game in her DPS form is to get those cryo infliction stacks or whatever infliction stacks up to then consume with her battle skill, turning it into a corrosion stacks. And that's because corrosion reduces the elements of the enemy drastically, allowing you to deal a lot more damage with pretty much everybody. So in the beginning here, we use both of our battle skills, right? And then we have to do 2 final strikes to fulfill Jahi's combo skill, right? So we go bam, and then now Jahi's combo skill comes up, and this allows us to get arts amplification from Jahi as well. But you'll notice we save it because we want to make sure it lasts a long time. To be fair, Jahi's lasts 25 whole seconds. And so I could cast it and I'd have it available for the next 25 seconds, but I'm pretty I like to make sure all buffs are up by the time I cast ult. So we hold on to it for quite a bit here, right? So we pop her ultimate. Keep in mind, once you pop her ult, she has this whole entire radius field that fills the whole field. This means that in the next 2 final strikes, you will get additional damage from your arcane. And then after that, it'll transform into an ultimate. But you have to do 2 final strikes from anybody on your team. Okay, so that's the next step here. But in this process, we're actually still trying to fill up these cryo stacks up top, right? Jahi will apply a second one, but we need 2 more from Tong Tong. And that's exactly what we end up doing. So let's go ahead and do these final strikes. Here's the first one right here. Bam, right? And you'll notice we then apply Jahi's debuff. I hope I'm saying that name, Jahi. We apply her debuff, and now the next 2 combo skills from both Arcane and Tong Tong now apply and come up. But we have to remember what I said earlier. We have to be very careful with Arcane's combo skill, because once you pop it, that imprisonment debuff gets applied, which slows the enemy, but it only lasts for 4 seconds. And then we have to apply her battle skill while the imprisonment is on them to refresh the art susceptibility debuff so that it lands on top of her ult. That's a lot of stuff you got to make sure you're doing correctly. But once you practice it with enough rotations, it gets pretty easy. So we got one more final strike to cast, right? We cast another one. Bam. And while we cast that second one, we also use another battle skill with Tong Tong. Now you're starting to see why Akakuri is so important on this team, because you use a crap ton of battle skill points. And if you don't have Akakuri or somebody in that slot giving you SP back to the team, you're constantly trying to get those meters up so that you can get enough skill points to cast, right? But now we're at the stage where we've casted both of our final strikes inside of Arcane's ultimate. You'll notice that the ultimate down here has now popped up for us to cast a second ultimate. This is the 1440% multiplier. This is the big nuker. So now you want to pop everyone's ultimate, right? Jahi's ultimate, the link buff from Akakuri, and then pop, boom, for that second ultimate. Okay, so you're going to see that happen here in just a bit. So now we pop the ult from Jahi, massive arts amplification. We pop the combo skills. You see this blue little buff on the guy? He's slowed now. He has imprisonment on him, but it's only for 4 seconds. The next step here is to cast the battle skill of Arcane to then refresh that art susceptibility debuff that's been put on him. Right, so we use this SP funnel, bam. Now we've casted the battle skill of Arcane, and as you can see, it's some good damage. Look at that, bro. That's 152K, 161K, 38K. We ain't even got into the nuke yet. That's how strong she is. Now, the cool thing about casting that battle skill, in addition to that, is we're going to consume all 4 of these ice stacks up here and turn it into 4 stacks of corrosion. So that it contributes to all the damage we're going to be dealing. Look at all of these debuffs and buffs down here. I mean, debuffs on him, buffs down here. We're now ready to nuke the hell out of them, right? So we do this, and then we do her ultimate to follow up immediately afterwards. Now, with a little bit of luck on your side, she'll crit, but you only got a 5% chance to crit, which means we deeply need a support that allows her to guarantee this crit. Because guys, if this crits, instead of 588, that will be close to 900K. Yep. She hits like a truck, bro. That's a non-crit that just happened right there. And then on top of this, lasers home in on him. But what I like to do is I save Tong Tong's ultimate so that this guy can't go into his cutscene, at least not until, he gets out of the freeze. So now I use Tong Tong's ult to freeze him so he stays in the freaking Vegeta stance, bro. The Dragon Ball Z stance, and we do a bit more damage before that cutscene goes in. Now, if you're strong enough, if your team is loaded, there ain't gonna be no cutscene. He's dead after this. But I do that to make sure the freeze stays even longer, right? So we get a little bit more damage off, and now it goes into the freeze. At this point, once again, if you're stacked, the guy's dead. We came over here to do a little bit more damage to him, cast another battle skill, and it's bam, it's GG's, right? Call it a day. So now I want the whole thing to go through so you guys can watch it all the way through. I know when I pause, you don't get to see the full thing. I want to make sure you understand everything that's happening in that rotation. And now that you know it, we can just watch it collectively together. But basically, that's how it works, right? You want to make sure you're like front loading all the things to set them up. She's a nuke character in her DPS form. And so if you're not setting these things up, the nuke isn't going to hit as hard. It'll probably hit for like 300K or something. But the whole frequency, the whole entire rotation, when you go through it, it feels very satisfying. You do want to withhold combo skills, make sure all the buffs are lined up nice and neat. And then once you do get into her ult, you just pray that it crits. It's a 5% chance. So you really are like, probably ain't gonna happen, but if it does happen, man, he's dead right here if it happens, right? It's like, oh, and then he gets frozen so he can't move. And Akakuri's back there pumping out SP as you're doing all of this too. So it's a really fun play style, man. I will say though, outside of her DPS form, the support form is also a blast. The support form just provides a ton of comfort, man. Inside of those AoE situations, she's pulling targets in, she's slowing them down, she's applying arts infliction on whatever elemental team you're rocking, and then the corrosive effect is getting in there too if you're doing it that way. She's a great character. Now, in case you guys were wondering, we're using the DPS set on that showcase I just showed you. Tong Tong is using her signature weapon, weapon with this set right here. This is a very good set for Tong Tong. Jahi is going to be on the Eternal Zyronite set. I also have a Detonate on her. Detonate's a fantastic weapon, and because we are using her battle skill, it will apply the Arts Burst. And then she's also max duped as well, which she's a 5-star character, pretty easy to do. And then you have Akakuri, our 4-star character, the real MVP. She's max duped, and she's using this orange weapon right here. It is max refined, and you can get it max refined eventually in Arknights Endfield, but I mean, the max refinement is completely unnecessary. I just wanted to see more big numbers. She's going to be on the Frontier set. The rest is history. That was all the time I had to test with Arcane. Once again, whether you're using her for a DPS, I do recommend having a Tong Tong at the very least, or you're going to have to use her with Perlica, Akakuri, and one of the supportive options like a Gilberta, Ardelia, or the Idol Girl that's coming soon. But if you're using her for a supportive role, she's very comforting on a plethora of elemental different compositions with the exception of physical. Hopefully I brought you guys some good, insightful content so that you can learn how to play Arcane. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and happiness. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.